We want to thank you all so very much for coming.
You gonna close the door?
Okay, I have 5:30, so Ms. Fields, it's on you. We don't want to take up any of your time.
Right, so do I just start with why I'm interested, or?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'm interested in being part of the Community Oversight Board just because I know that it's going to bring a lot of transparency and accountability to the citizens of Nashville. I think I'll be a good representative because I do not have any children and I do not have any family members that are or have been directly affected by anything dealing with the police department. However, I do think that I would have a good voice because I would be able to show the citizens of Nashville that, not only are we trying to bring something good to the city of Nashville to help the police department, but also the citizens. We want to make sure that if something is done incorrectly or that's, unjustifiable, that it will be, or they will be held accountable. But not only will the person that's in the wrong be held accountable, also, we're going to look at the criminal side as well. Let the citizens know that we're not just here looking at one specific side, but all sides as well, and that, we want to bring justice to not some citizens, but all.
And you can go straight to, have you answered all three of them?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you can go straight through it, we're good.
All right. So the next one was, on the paperwork it said equity, but I believe it should have been equality.
Okay, so you do it the way that is best for you to explain it to us.
All right. So I am familiar with civil rights and equality issues. I do have a minor in criminal justice. I do have a master's degree in HR. So I have been kind of well-versed in the Civil Rights Acts. I have not, fortunately, had the opportunity to specifically apply those laws in certain situations, but I would be able to, if needed, put those laws into effect to, help different citizens out or be effective for this board.
Members, any questions?
You say you're well-versed in Civil Rights Act?
I won't say well-versed, but I do have a master's degree in HR, and we did have to deal a lot with learning the civil rights laws, learning Title IX, learning Title VI, and those types of things.
Experience applying that anywhere?
Not specifically, but I have worked in HR. I do currently work in benefits for the state of Tennessee.
I'm sorry, I wasn't here when you started. You probably said where you're from.
I'm from Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville,
I currently
okay.
live in the Percy Priest, Antioch area.
You go to public schools here?
I did. I went to I graduated from Maplewood High School and Whites Creek. I graduated undergraduate from Tennessee State University, and I got my master's degrees from Bethel University. I feel like I'm a lifelong student.
That's
I'm
a good
supposed to be
thing.
starting law school in the fall, so
Lifelong learner.
learn, yes.
You want us to ask you before your question, or just pop them out there?
Oh, if you can go.
Okay.
Nobody else?
So I didn't find much on your community service experience. Can you expound on that a little bit? And I just want to get to the question of asking you what makes you think you feel qualified to be on this board.
I do have community service with the Goodwill of Nashville. I'm also a part of a women's organization called Real Women of Color, where we help ladies in the East Nashville area. We go to their schools. We help the teenage girls to make sure that they stay on the correct path. I'm currently also going to be a 2019 Tennessee mentor for the different schools for the Tennessee Scholarship, Promise Scholarship. So that's a little bit of my community service experience. I've been doing that for probably over 15 years now.
Thank you. And the one last question I would have is there anything in your background or that would cause you to be biased toward anyone who comes before you to be evaluated?
There is not, which is why I'm currently going to law school, because I want to be able to defend all sides. I know there are a lot of people that certain people wouldn't take their cases. So I kind of feel like I would be one of those people that would be willing to take any case on, even despite having mounds of evidence against them.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering the questions.
No problem.
Anyone else?
Do you have any policing history at all? Any family members, anybody that's actually done police work?
No, I do not.
Anyone else?
What drove you to go to law school?
I've always wanted to do it since I was an early child. I've always been a debater, so I've always wanted to do it. I just never followed through with it. And now that I'm a lot older, I've chosen to go ahead and do it.
Thank you, and it's been rewarding. Okay, you've enjoyed that.
I have.
Anyone else? We've got 5 more minutes. Is there anything that you want to say to us or sum up for us or anything? One lasting thing that you want to stay with us as you leave?
Just that I think I'll be a great representation for the board. Again, just because I do not have any direct contact with any family members that have, any conflict or anything with the police department. I do not have any children, so I think I would have more than enough time to commit to the board, to commit to any trainings that I need to commit to, and just be an all-around great voice and experience to try to bring the community together, to let them know that, this is not a board that's coming together to go against, one party or the other. It's trying to pull everyone together.
All right, if there are no other questions, thank you so very much for taking the time out to come to this.
Thank you all.
I just want to remind the committee members that in between times, the mic and everything stays on the whole time.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And the next person is William Leslie. That comes in at 5:40.
Madam Chair, I guess it's difficult based on the posting notices to run ahead of schedule, right? I mean, we can't really fairly.
Take the next person? No, yes, no. So we just have the extra time, wiggle around, get comfortable, because we'll be in here a little while. Hi, sir. How are you doing today? Good. Well, we've got a couple of minutes before we start, so I'm just going to ask you, do you have the 3 questions that we're asking you to speak about?
Yes, ma'am, I did see those in the email.
Okay, so once you start, you can just go ahead and start and talk to us about those.
Okay.
However you want, and then we may have some questions at the end, or
Okay.
you can take the whole 10 minutes, however you would like.
Okay.
Yes, we start exactly at 5:40. And I'm sure our lovely timekeeper will let us know when that is.
Wait a minute, I'm a timekeeper.
Our handsome, of course, Mr. Vice Mayor, our handsome timekeeper would let us know.
So she just said, so that timekeeper gets you started at 5:40. I'm actually watching the time for the 10 minutes.
I
So-
appreciate that.
So
I am.
you'll hear me make some type of noise.
Okay, thank you,
You're
thank you. I needed the noise.
It's the most I can do for you. We're all new to this.
Me too.
Everybody is.
We'll all figure it out together.
Yep. So swallow, take a deep breath. It looks like there's 1 more minute.
Okay.
Antoinette, are these hours to keep or?
I believe so, sir.
Notes or-
Yes, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Oh, the sheets with the names? Yeah. you
Yes,
can keep
yes,
those.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
That's what I'm doing anyway. Mr. Leslie, it is your show.
Okay. Well, my name is, it says William Leslie on the sheet. I'm not that formal. I go by Billy. That's my mother gave me that name, and so I stick with it. So that's who I am. I am born and raised here in Nashville. Spent my growing up years in Hendersonville, though, but I've moved back to Nashville in 2003 and have been here ever since. I enjoy the city. And it gives me an interest to serve on this committee. I have since decided several years ago to go back to law school, so that gave me an interest in all things constitutional and criminal and things that kind of go on within our justice system. And then after that, last year, I had the opportunity to serve on the Davidson County Grand Jury for 3 months. So that was quite an interesting time just to kind of go through things and see kind of the back channels of our criminal justice system and see how people get cycled through it and things like that. And that really piqued my interest on serving when this came up for the vote last year, interest in serving on this committee that way. So, and then as well, I was nominated by the Tennessee Equality Project. And I think it's vitally important that the LGBT population of Nashville be represented in some form or fashion. That's not necessarily me, but Tennessee Equality Project did support my nomination for this committee, so I think that's important. That being said, as far as my background with the criminal justice system in general, I also volunteer with the Music City Community Court that Judge Bell puts on about every 6 to 8 weeks. I serve as a volunteer attorney, helping people get their records cleaned up so they can get better employment, better housing, and just in general clean up their records so they can feel better about themselves. I think that's another way to give back, and I think this is one step even past that. I think that giving back to your community is vitally important, and now that I'm outside of law school and I have a little bit more time on my hands, I want to start that service again. My background in the LGBT community, I've served on the boards of Tennessee Equality Project in the past, as well as the Human Rights Campaign Board of Governors on a national level. So I think that qualifies me from the LGBT standpoint to serve as a voice. I am in contact with a lot of people in that community. As far as being an attorney, I am familiar with the laws as far as how things operate in the criminal justice system and constitutionally. So I do have that background, as well as working with the expungement clinic from Judge Bell's point of view and being on the grand jury from Nashville. So generally speaking, that's kind of what I've got to say about the 3 questions that you all had. So if you all have any questions of me, I am happy to answer them.
Members? Yes, sir.
Do you have any family members who are police officers or any experience with friends with police officers?
I do have friends that are police officers. I went to law school with several of them. I had a former neighbor that is a detective with the police department. So they're not what I consider tight, close friends of mine. I don't see them on a daily basis, but if I picked up the phone and called tomorrow, they'd meet me for lunch and things like that. Yes, sir.
I mean, you don't have any experience in what their everyday job duties encompass?
Just outside of what I heard in the grand jury, that kind of thing, because you get a sense of what police officers go through sitting on the grand jury. So yes, sir, I do know as far as that goes. But those friends of mine, that what they go through on a daily basis, no, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else?
Yes, thank you. Do you have anything that would cause you to be biased towards any racial or ethnic group or police department in any way?
No, sir, I think everybody should be treated the same way, fairly.
I noticed there's not a whole lot of activity on any social media feeds that you're a part of. So I really just want to ask you what really stands out in your mind that makes you qualified to be on this board?
I think I'm passionate about my community. I think I'm passionate about people being treated fairly, both police officers that may be involved in something that come across this board, as well as the citizen themselves that may be having that interaction. I'm passionate about giving back to my community. I've served on the several LGBT boards in the past, and I think this is going my next step in my life and my path. So that's, I think, what qualifies me to go forward.
Anyone else?
if I could,
Yes.
given your unique experience with the LGBT community,
Yes.
which not every candidate has, but so I appreciate you presenting that information and just wanted to expound on that a little bit. The LGBT community and especially the transgender community
Yes, sir.
face any number of layers of discrimination
Yes, sir.
within our society, and in particular when it comes to violence towards transgender persons, transgender members of the community of color in the United States, unfortunately, continue to face a lot of discrimination in particular. I'm just curious with your background with TEP and other organizations sort of advocating on those organizations advocate for equality measures for those particular portions of our community. Do you have any particular experiences to share either through your board work or through your law school work that might help us to understand
within the transgender community? I mean, they do
bear to this
yeah,
work?
they do face a lot of uphill battles. I was most heartened to see the dialogue that was had recently with the police officers and the transgender community, and the resolution that they came with those officers involved in the Facebook and all of that ordeal. I'm friends with Marissa Richmond. I've known her for probably 15 years, so I mean we've had conversations through the years about things, and I'm very much in tune to kind of what they go through. I mean myself, I'm not transgender, so personally I can't identify with that kind of thing, but I do see their struggle, and no one should have to go through that. Everybody should be, like I said earlier, treated with respect and dignity and equality and fairness across the board. There's no substitute for any of that.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate your answer. Of course, just as a clarity, you work with Raymond James as
Currently,
a
yes.
financial
In the
advisor.
financial world, yes.
And then you are also a member of the Tennessee Bar?
Yes.
I'm
not an attorney with Raymond James. I'm just an attorney.
You're an attorney separately,
Yes,
as interested as a passion.
Yes.
Okay, but you're a member of the bar, but you actually do, or a financial planner, other.
Well, I work with institutional investors here locally. Kind of a small niche market. We sell securities to banks, insurance companies, that kind of
So
thing
you
for their portfolios.
The two backgrounds. Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted
Sure.
to see if you were practicing.
Anyone? Yes, please.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. Are you actually practicing, have you practiced any criminal law?
I have done some juvenile work in Sumner County. That is about the extent of my criminal as far as practicing within the court system with that, other than the expungement clinic that I volunteer for Judge Bell's.
How long ago was it you served on the grand jury?
The last January through March, so just last year.
When I had the opportunity to serve as foreman on that twice.
Okay.
That's a great experience.
It's an amazing experience, and I mean, if anybody's ever called for grand jury duty, it's a big time commitment, but most definitely do it. You learn a lot about what goes on in our city, because more or less, I mean, I live in a bubble. I mean, I think we all live in our own little bubbles, but at the same time, you see what goes on out there in the bigger city at large, and it makes you want to help the city that much more.
I was gonna ask you, from that experience, do you feel the grand jury system is fair? I mean, it does what?
From my 3 months experience, I made every effort to make it fair from what I saw, and it wasn't always maybe what my other juror members wanted or what the DA wanted, but if I saw something just from my point of view that wasn't up to snuff, I wasn't afraid to speak my mind. So I think overall, though, it's a fair system.
So you did have a few no true bills?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir, we did.
If I may ask just one follow-up.
Yes.
Sometimes the grand juries provide recommendations to the court and to the city. Did
Yes.
your grand jury group have any particular recommendations that you offered?
Oh, goodness, that's stretching my memory back for just a second. We did. It was mental health was a big issue. More resources for the juvenile court across the way here was an issue. But I think, the police academy is, I think, far from, I think they need some more resources out there. It was kind of as a growing city, and the resources, at least out there in the facilities that we saw, I think are a little bit small and a little bit outdated. So those are just 3 things kind of off the top of my head that I do remember in that report. It's available on the website, though.
Oh, and we want to thank you so very much, sir.
Thank you all. You all have a great evening.
You as well, sir.
Y'all got a much longer road than I do. Thank you.
The next person, Caleb Mundy.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
And you have your 3 questions?
I was sent them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we're opening it up and letting you go. You can talk
Okay.
to us about that any way that you want, then we may have some questions for you if you
Okay.
don't do the whole
Sure.
10 minutes.
My interest in serving on the community oversight board mostly stems from just supporting it, being in existence, and then having several friends who decided to nominate me. So that's my main interest in participating. I also think I became licensed as a Tennessee attorney about a year ago, and it's really fostered a fair number of feelings of being more involved in the community in general, just lending that. The position I've been given in that, which even though I'm not terribly experienced or whatever, still confers a certain amount of power just from knowledge and experience. So just looking for some opportunities to serve the community. As far as background goes, well, I do have a law degree and I passed the Tennessee bar, so I have a fair amount of knowledge with a lot of constitutional issues around police work, searches, seizures, that sort of thing. I also have worked, I interned with the Public Defender's Office here with Mary Catherine, whose last name escapes me, but she's in charge of all the non-citizen cases, so there's an extra amount of sort of complications and complexity that happens there as well. And I did, as an intern, I worked on a 1983, Section 1983 civil rights case out of East Tennessee that involved some discriminatory action with a small municipality out there that, with their power, some of their utility boards, things like that. And as far as background experience with criminal justice and policing practices, I do act as a criminal defense attorney here in Davidson County and some of the surrounding counties, which involves not only sort of reading warrants, being aware of police interactions with my clients, but also a sort of day-to-day familiarity with the officers. I can't walk in there and just unload whatever sort of outrage I think I've picked up from my clients, which may or may not be warranted, because those are people I'm going to work with the next day and the next day and the next day after that. So that's a pretty good experience with that. And then I do have a small number of friends who are police officers in the state of Tennessee. One in Murfreesboro, one's a state trooper. I'm reasonably familiar with sort of their side of things as well.
Any questions?
Yes, I just have a couple of brief questions. It appears as though you've had some interesting interactions personally with the police department. I noticed that you identified interactions during traffic stops, but one in particular, I believe, were you stopped for a mistaken identity from the suspect in another
I was, yeah. It's been a fun story to be able to relate during some of my law school
Talk
classes.
to us about what that was like and what your experience was. Was it here in Nashville?
It was here in Nashville. I'm also a musician. That's what I did before law school, during law school, and still to a certain extent now. So I was playing down on Broadway late at night and was walking up 5th past the Ryman and got stopped by an officer very cordially and said, "Hey, I need you to stay here for a minute." This was 2 or 3 years ago. There had been a shooting incident in the parking garage on 3rd, and a guy who I vaguely matched his description as like having a beard and whatever. So it wasn't a legal detention because I didn't try to leave, but they asked me to stay, and I was happy to do that. And hung out there with a couple of officers for 10 or 15 minutes, and then they drove me around in a patrol car over to 3rd Avenue and had me stand up and had the witness in an opposing car. They shone the light on me so I couldn't see them, but they could see me, and just checked for a positive ID, and thankfully I didn't look close enough like the person who actually committed the crime to do that. I think, I didn't have any strong emotions about that. I knew really clearly where I had been and where I hadn't been. And all my personal interactions with police officers have been really cordial and polite and professional. So I expected that. I think in the years since then, that's sort of educated me on the difference between maybe what I can expect and what other people can expect based on race, gender, age. I mean, I'm a white male, age 18 to 40, so I get the benefit of the doubt a lot of times.
So all in all, your experience was favorable as it relates to that, considering what you had to go through?
It was, and actually the officer and I spent a lot of time talking about, like, I was in law school at the time, talking to him about, like, I understand whatever, and I can't put a big black mark on my background check by making a big stink about this or whatever, too, as well. He was really apologetic the whole time.
Anybody else?
Well, just what instrument do you play, or?
Bass guitar.
Bass guitar.
Yeah, bass,
Okay.
most bass guitar down there, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna ask, this question is one I always ask during voir dire on a trial. Do you feel that the policemen deserve any more credibility in terms of their testimony than the average citizen?
That's a really tricky question. I think I'm not sure. I could say I can maybe go through the issues I see in that, and one is that the police officers are the professionals. They've been trained to identify certain situations that a civilian isn't, and they've seen a lot more of that. And they are, they're going to be in front of those courts again and again and again, on the one hand. On the other hand, I think that they deserve somewhat a high level of scrutiny because they are the professional, and they are, I think we can expect more of professional law enforcement than we can of the average person walking around the street, both in their professionalism, in their patience, in their calmness, all this sort of what they bring to a situation.
What I was getting to, and you answered it well, but the truthfulness or veracity of an answer of a police officer, do you feel it deserves more credit than the average citizen, or because they're police officers?
I don't think based on the virtue of them being a police officer, possibly based on the virtue of their history with the court and the prosecutors that they're dealing with. Maybe if this person has come in time after time and been proven right, but.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? You have a little less than 3 minutes. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with before you exit?
I will say, and I actually thought this was one of the questions here, but it was on the questionnaire. I think, I'd love to say philosophically that I think the purpose of the board is about bringing any investigation into the public eye and sort of doing its best to restore public confidence in the process of investigation. I don't expect there to be different outcomes than there would be from the regular whatever processes have been in place before. And I know the board doesn't have power to do more than recommend anyway. But to me, that's what I think the great value of the Community Oversight Board is to reconnect the community with the law enforcement community and to take some of that investigation and make it a little more public so that the Nashville community can feel better about the process that goes on to evaluate police actions.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so very much for taking the time and coming in here and speaking with us.
Thank you very much.
You have a wonderful afternoon. We have 2 minutes before Heidi Hall.
You should have asked him about his beard.
No, I'm just stepping in for Heidi. So
Somebody else has quite a beard. He's being mistaken.
Shulman would have asked him about his beard.
Okay. Hi.
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hey there, how are you?
Good.
You have about a minute before your time actually starts, and you have your 3 questions that we've sent to you.
Great, yes.
Okay, so when you start, you can just start talking about those any way that you want, and then at the end, if you finish before the 10 minutes is up, we may have some questions for you.
That'd be great.
And you still got just a little under a minute.
Okay. Can I distribute this? This is just a statement that I wrote as a supplement to my...
So, Madam Chair, I will note that Councilmember Van Reese is in the room and
Okay.
has a very bad sinus infection.
Oh, no.
She's gonna be going like this and stuff?
I promise not to kiss anybody in the room. At least tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. It is time. The floor is yours.
Hi, my name's Heidi Hall. I live in Madison, and I became interested in serving on the Community Oversight Board truly from the time that I read an article that Stephen Hale wrote for The Scene about the fact that this idea for the board had been entertained in the pages of the Tennessean since the 70s over some issues that had happened. And I had been kind of on the fence until that time, but after reading historically the reasons for the board and then thinking about recent events, I got behind it, voted for it, and now would like to serve on that board. And it also occurred to me in traffic the other day, I was behind a patrol car and it says on the back of our cars, Nashville's Guardians. And I got to thinking about that and I thought about how like us police officers are and how unlike us they are. And they're like us in the ways that they have human needs and are fallible and all the other ways. But unlike us, they're charged with protecting us. They're charged with enforcing the laws, and there aren't. And that's a huge amount of responsibility. So I just thought it would be wonderful to have a board like this to just kind of oversee these folks that are so incredibly brave and have done remarkable things, but also can make mistakes with devastating consequences. I think about with the bravery shown by Eric Mumaw, who died plunging into an icy river trying to save a woman. You know, I think about my own experience as my home being robbed by a workman who was in there, and the fact that there was a detective who got my engagement ring back when I would have thought that could never be solved, you know. I've had wonderful experience, but there's been some unfortunate things as well, and I'd like to be a part of reviewing these. So my background, I would say the thing that would serve me the best on this board would just be the fact that I spent 25 years in journalism. During that time, I was frequently in contact with police. I learned to write with a lack of bias, to consider things with a lack of bias. Of course, it's crazy for people to say they're unbiased. We're all biased. But I learned to stow my bias and look at things dispassionately. I think that would serve me very well on a board like this one. As well, I am aware of the scrutiny that this board will come under and is already under by the state legislature. And I don't flinch from that, and I don't flinch from criticism. And I think that would serve me very well on this board. And then finally, when I talk about my experience, well, I've probably taken this out of order. When it deals with civil rights and equity issues, I would like to just say that I feel like I have tried very much to come out of my privilege, see the way that other people live. I would say if you looked at my social media feeds, which I was required to provide on my questionnaire, you would find a diverse group of people of different genders and sexual orientations, people of different races and nationalities. I think that I've paid very close attention. I've filled my life with people who are different from me, and I am extremely interested in them seeking and finding equal treatment in our public spaces, in our workplaces, and everywhere else we are in this great country. I think that's all I have to say. It's outlined here, and I'd love to answer any questions you have for me.
Great. Do I have some questions?
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journalism background. Is that as an investigator, a writer, and are you currently working as a journalist?
So I'm not in journalism anymore. I'll take that first. I am in media relations for Vanderbilt, although I want to be clear, I will not be speaking for Vanderbilt in any way in this process. And they want me to make that very clear as well. My journalism career began in Missouri, right out of high school, and it has been explanatory, it has been investigative. As far as it deals with police, one of my first stories was covering a fatal car accident. I've covered a serial killer in Florida. I still have Don Aaron's phone number in my cell phone for some unknown reason. I just can't bear to part with it, I guess. So, yeah, that's a 25-year journalism career that spanned many types of stories, including crime stories.
I got a couple of questions.
Okay, sir.
One is, you said you voted for this and you decided you want to be a part of it. What do you believe the best outcome for the community is for having this oversight board?
I think
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the best outcome would be to have implicit trust in our police force. That is the thing that we would be going for, is to understand that there's a new level of checks and balances, and that there is recourse if people disagree with outcomes, and for that to, I don't want to say restore trust, because I think people have a lot of trust. I mean, at least in my circles, I know that's not the entirety of representation, but to maintain and increase trust at the minimum.
And one other question, I think I should ask this of everybody since I asked it one. One of the concerns, well, I'm a criminal lawyer and I have a lot of confidence in police too, don't get me wrong.
I have you in my cell too, I'm kidding.
Okay. But when policemen testify, and I generally ask this of prospective jurors, when policemen testify before the court, do you feel they deserve any more credibility for their truthfulness than the ordinary citizen?
No, because they are citizens just like the rest of us. Yeah.
I had another question over here, please.
Sure. Just got a couple things I want to follow up on. You are pretty active on social media, but I don't really see any very harmful things there. I mean, you definitely post your political stances, but you made a couple statements in your opening statement. You talked about positive interactions with police, and you made a comment about unfortunate things as well. Could you expand on what you mean by that?
Well, I'm talking about the situation that actually led to the call to be renewed for this board, which are the police-involved shootings of Mr. Hambrick and Mr. Clemens.
Have you got an opinion on those?
I do have some opinions, but I don't know if this is the right venue to begin sharing them.
You're getting ready to go on the board that oversees the police department.
Well, those won't be coming before it, will it? Because they're already in the past, or will they?
I think it's relevant.
Mm-hmm. I think that in the case of Mr. Clemens, the finding is done. That's in our past. That's been settled. In the case of Mr. Hambrick, it's ongoing and remains to be seen.
So you don't have an opinion beyond that?
No, not that I want to say at this time.
All right. You also made a reference to the fact that we all have biases. So do you want to comment on yours? And most importantly, do you think, how will that bias impact your service to this board?
Well, I am biased in favor of justice for all people. I am wildly supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. I am married to a black man, and I am biased in favor of all of my diverse friends enjoying the same protections from the police department. And I would say that couldn't help but be brought into that venue. As far as other things, and in particular cases, I think I am very good at setting aside things and looking at the facts. And that's what I would hope to do.
I appreciate
We have about, I'm sorry. I was going to say, we have about 2 more minutes.
You have about one minute.
Appreciate your answers, and you might be about as non-biased as I could ever come across with those kind of answers. You certainly spread it across a wide variety of spectrums there. So I appreciate your candor.
Thank you.
Is there anything in less than a minute that you would like to share on your exit?
No, I just want to say that I want this job and I want to ask the council for it, and I appreciate you letting me get this far. And if I have to do a Susan Lucci next week, then I'll be I'll be pleased to have been nominated, and that will be the truth. And I very much appreciate this opportunity. I want to thank Council Member Van Rees especially.
Thank you so much for coming in and spending time with us.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Our next person coming in will be Dale Mitchell.
Do you all need anything? Do you all need water, anything?
Hi there, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
It is 6:10. I don't want to take up any of your time, so I will ask, do you have your questions? You know the questions?
Yes.
3 questions? Okay, so we're going to open the floor. It's going to be yours. You talk about those any way you want, and then if you finish before the 10 minutes is up, we may have some questions for you.
Oh, wow.
The show is yours.
Well, let's see, let me try to stay on task here.
Now, you can do it any way you want to.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted me to stay in order. My background is from the securities and investment business, but I've also been a foster parent, a jury member. I had a very early career move as a legal secretary for a legal defense firm. That's been over 30 years ago. But always been fascinated with the community and wanting to serve. And I've also been a foster parent for the state of Tennessee. I'm not currently, but I really see, it's hard to put into words exactly, and I guess I'm ill-prepared in that regard, but the opportunity to serve my city and my community is just of paramount importance to me. And I now have the time in my life, where you can devote those hours and that time. So I would welcome the opportunity to serve. Let's see. I did disclose this on my questionnaire. I am married to a retired police officer. So I have kind of been exposed to some of the things that they deal with. But also the children that he's been very active in the summer camp that they have up at the FOP camp on Old Hickory Lake, and volunteered a week of his time every summer to be a counselor during one of those sessions. And I was very fortunate to be active with him in that, and we just got so much encouragement out of that, just the connections that were made there, and would like to kind of see some of that carry forward, because I feel like the young people of this community need some mentoring, fostering, that type of activity to succeed, especially, unfortunately, children from the inner city. And so I guess that's really probably all I have to offer. I'd be welcome any questions.
Anybody?
Got one. You're married to a retired police officer.
That is correct.
I'm sure you were married to him throughout his law enforcement career.
Actually, not his full career. It's a second marriage for us. So we've been married for 17 years. So.
Okay. Do you feel like that would impede any ability that you might have to be objective?
No, I really don't. I kind of am all the time playing devil's advocate. He'd be the first one to tell you that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
If you didn't mind just talking a little bit about where in Nashville you live and some of the communities that you work with and are active in, what part of town?
I live in the Bellevue community, and I've been there for 20 years. Prior to that, I was in Sylvan Park. I consider myself a Nashville native, although I was not born here, but came here at 6 weeks of age, so pretty close to it. But I grew up in the Westmead area. Some people might consider that kind of a little bit of a protected bubble area, but I've just followed the growth of Nashville and just really want to make a contribution.
And you went to high school? And then
Yes, I did. And then I attended the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Did not graduate, but I attended there for 2 years. So, yes, I went to school right on West End.
Anyone else?
I've got my same question. I've been asking other people. As a criminal lawyer, I have jury trials, and I generally ask people who are going to get on the jury or prospective jury people, do they believe a police officer, when he testifies before the court, deserves more credibility for truth and veracity than an ordinary citizen? That might not be a fair question for you, having been married to a police officer.
That I think you would want it to be a given, pretty much. And
Yeah, I mean, you know,
assuming what their profession is, it probably isn't a fair question for me. But you know, I have served on a jury before, and you know, I think I would answer your question. Yes, I think the majority of people are gonna give a higher sway to a police officer, but I do know that not everybody is gonna subscribe to that. I understand that.
May I follow up on that? Do you happen to recall what were the types of cases on which you served as a juror?
Gosh, it's been a couple of years, but it was really kind of more to clean up some charges, but it was a robbery of a convenience store. But it was to kind of clean up some prior charges, and it was kind of an interesting twist, but
Thank you.
yes.
Ms. Mitchell, you have 4 minutes before the end of this. I'm going to say a little under 4. Is there anything that you would like to share with us, or any lasting words you'd like for us to know before your exit?
Well, I feel like you all are charged with a really strong mandate from the amendment passing. I will have to say, I think it's we are in such interesting times with just the growth of Nashville and the development here, and I think we have to be very careful and methodical how we move forward in this process. It's a lot of eyes across the country are on us. I welcome the opportunity to go through the citizens aspect of the I don't exactly know the proper term for it, but the Citizens Academy to be able to educate friends, acquaintances, neighbors, everybody that I approached with my questionnaire, the nomination petition, was just so thrilled that I was doing it and was very supportive, and that was kind of left me with just kind of another little zeal to keep moving forward.
Good. Well, thank you so very much
Thank
for
you.
taking your time to come out here with us.
Thank
And
you.
you make sure you have a wonderful night.
Good luck with your deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Water, anyone? Everybody good?
We have a couple minutes.
Give about a minute and a half.
Yep.
Johnny, you go and get some water.
I'll bring you.
It's very inspiring.
Sit down, and they'll begin right up 6:20 for you.
Right there, Mr. Ballard. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
We're going to start at 6:20, and when we do, you have the 3 questions that you're talking on?
Yes, ma'am, I have made copies.
Okay, no, I mean, oh, sure, if you wanted to, I was thinking I didn't say you had to have the copies, but, yes, sir. I was just gonna say it's gonna be your show, so when that starts, any way that you wanna talk about those 3 or whatever, And then if you finish before the 10 minutes, then we'll have some questions for you.
Okay, can I give
Yes,
these?
sir, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, the first question is to briefly explain your interest in serving on a community oversight.
You have about 1 minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just giving my little spiel, so I didn't want to take any of your time.
Exactly on time.
We're trying to make sure everybody has equal time, and guess what? It's time.
Okay, anyway, briefly explain your interest in serving in the Community Oversight Board and the reasons you wish to serve. I'm confident that it would be a very enjoyable, rewarding, and satisfying experience communicating with oversight colleagues, other appropriate personnel, reviewing the applicable codes, rules, etc. that may apply, marrying them carefully with the case at hand, discussing them thoroughly, and achieving the very highest degree of accuracy, honesty, thoroughness via the recommendations submitted to the mayor's office. Please describe your background experience and/or familiarity with civil rights and equity issues. I've been deluged with abundant documentaries that exist in magazines, news, radio, TV for many, many years, dating back to the hangings of physical abuse, civil rights of drinking fountain restaurant and school segregation, Martin Luther King's honorable plight, the Mississippi Burning movie, Roots, etc. Please describe your background, experience, and/or familiarity with criminal justice and policy practicing. I worked at Vandenberg Air Force Base as an officer, at Riverbend Maximum Security Prison, Death Row, as an officer, and the U.S. Subsea as a chaser. Of course, following the alphanumeric codes, guidelines, rules that are readily available for view via oversight team member mate discussions as the cases arise.
Okay. Do I have any questions or comments?
One, it's kind of hard to escape the fact that you mentioned that your ex-wife has a restraining order out against you, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, I got contacted about going to court for a restraining order. My wife and I had been talking with each other and fussing back and forth and so forth and so on, trying to determine do we want to get back together or not. So 2 months went by, then I got served. You got to go to court and see about a restraining order. So I went to the court, and they gave me a restraining order, and I told them, well, hey, no problem, and that's it. I had no intention of contacting my wife even before, but that's okay.
Just to be clear, there's no domestic violence kind of issues that surround that restraining order?
No, sir, not at all.
And one other question, I'll be done. Had a lot of law enforcement connections in your background, spouse, neighbor, brother employed in law enforcement. Do you think that that would inhibit your ability to be objective on this board?
Not at all, no.
Councilmember Kendall?
Yeah, this is a question I ask all the candidates, but sometime you run into situations where absent other facts is the testimony of an officer and a regular citizen are in conflict. Do you believe that in that kind of situation, the officer's credibility is given, an officer is given more credibility than the citizen?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got one other.
Yes, sir.
When you mention your experience and familiarity with civil rights and equity issues, then you list a litany of things regarding physical abuse, civil rights, things back in the old Jim Crow laws, and
Yes.
How does that impact your thinking?
Well, it's educational to me. It lets me understand exactly what history has occurred in history, and it has. So it just makes me respect the entire environment, and I strongly feel that there's a great need for improving and making a better environment for everybody, and so that's it's a great educational experience, so to speak.
Follow up on that. One thing that I would, I'm so sorry to hear about the situations that you're experiencing with your wife.
No problem.
My condolences to you, and hope that y'all are able to be amicable. I did want to follow up a little bit more on your experience working in Riverbend Maximum Security Prison. which is unique experience. Few people would have that kind of experience, so that would be an interesting perspective to bring to the board. Just wanted to see if you could expound upon that a little bit, how you got into that particular line of work, if there were any particular takeaways that you had from your experience working with that particular population that you would potentially bring to bear for the board.
Yes, sir. There's one I'll never forget. That is an environment. I worked on death row and interacted with prisoners every day and so forth. I remember one evening I had come to work and it had been storming all day the night before. I'm going to try to talk fast. I know the 10 minutes. But it was really quiet. I'm in a pod by myself. There's 24 to 30 inmates there. They're on 1, 2, and 3 tiers, all in their cells. They can't do anything to me. Everything's quiet. You can hear a pin drop. So I'm happy because I'm thinking, well, when I get off here, I'll go home. I have a glass of wine. I have a little bit to eat. That's no problem. And then all of a sudden, I'm thinking about all those happy things, and I hear this sizzling kind of, gurgling kind of sound. I thought, what the heck's that? So I turn around and I look at the door to the entrance, and officers are trying to get in to help me. They're locked. And then I hear this horrible sound, pop, 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 and I'm going, oh my God, life is over as I know it. Officers can't get in to help me. The electrical system popped all the doors, so all the doors are designed to open up about 3 inches. So all the inmates in the entire complex could walk right out. I'm there. They'd love to kill. Some of them would love to kill me because I am me. I have a uniform on. I represent authority. So I'm thinking, oh my God, 30 seconds the most. I'll fight these guys. I'll be killed, stabbed. I'll bleed to death on the floor. That's the reality of it. Officers could not get in to help me. So one guy comes out. He's the 3rd floor. He's the leader. In these places, they have leaders. So he did something unusual. Everybody's watching him because whatever he says, they're going to do. They're going to tear me apart, do whatever. And he pointed to me and he went like this, and he waved his hand and he turned around, walked back in. I'm thinking, my God, what's happened here? I looked at the door. Nobody ran in with shotguns. They still can't get in the place. And so eventually everybody went back into their cells and they pulled the doors to. And I'm thinking, I must be dreaming. I swear to you, I went, am I at home dreaming this thing? I went home that night. I thought, I was still just amazed. I couldn't comprehend such a thing, an explanation. So I went back to work the next day. I'm getting a chocolate milk. The guy who had called off the tack was a head cook also. They cooked their own food. He said, hey, you looked a little worried there. You looked like you might be scared when the doors popped on the cells. And I told him, I was very concerned. I was scared to death what I was. I was very concerned. Trust me, I was. He says, you never take advantage of us. You don't treat us mean. You don't treat us bad. You don't ever have to worry about anybody doing anything to you. You don't ever have to worry about that. I said, I appreciate it kindly, and I meant it. That's all it was to that.
Thank you for sharing that experience.
Any others? You have about 2 minutes left. Is there any thing that you would like to say to us, any parting words that you would like us to remember before your exit?
Well, no, ma'am, other than I think it would be a very, very exciting and very interesting experience. And I'm looking forward to it should it happen.
Well, thank you so very much for coming and sharing with us, and you have a great night.
Thank you, Bill.
We have a little over a minute before the next person, Arnold Hayes, comes in. Hi, Mr. Hayes.
Hi.
You have the 3 questions that we asked you to speak on?
Yes.
Well, as soon as it gets to 6:30, it'll be your show, and you can speak on those any way that you want. You will have 10 minutes. At the end of, if you finish before the end of 10 minutes, then we may have some questions for you.
Okay, am I
So
permitted
right
to
now-
just have a brief introduction?
You are. It will be part of your 10 minutes though.
Yes, that's
So,
fine.
yes, sir.
Okay.
You've got about a minute, because we start everybody at that time, and then how you want to spend it, it's up to you.
All right, thanks. All righty.
Madam Chair, I have 6:30.
And mine just changed as well. It's your show, sir.
Okay. I'd just like to say good evening, and again, my name is Arnold Hayes, and I'm pleased to be nominated by the Nashville NAACP and also by private petition. I've been in Nashville for lived in Nashville for 35 years. I did supply a brief biography, resume, and also 6 recommendation letters to the Metro clerk. I do have copies of the hard copies of the bio and recommendations letters if needed. The recommendation letters were from Ms. Gloria Sweetlove, the president of Tennessee State NAACP, Dr. Norman Reed, Senator-elect and now Senator Brenda Gilmore, Dr. Robert Quinn, the Reverend Perry Wiggins III, and Dr. Sekou Franklin. And I look forward to answering your questions and conveying to you why I should be confirmed for the Community Oversight Board.
Okay, and you can go ahead and speak to your questions
Okay.
first.
So the
Yes,
first
sir.
question, and I know you have the question, so I don't have to repeat the question. I would like to contribute to making Nashville a safer city for all, both for the public and also for law enforcement. As a survivor of police misconduct, I hope to bring my social justice activist involvement, business experience, church leadership to the board. We have to get this right. Lives depend on it. This is probably the most important, high-profile, and challenging board ever in Nashville. Based on the facts, this board will often have to make decisions that will be unpopular with both the public and law enforcement. So besides the standard requirements, board members need to be able to handle pressure. I have experience handling pressure. The pressure of getting a production robot back up and running to avoid my employer losing millions of dollars. The pressure of managing people in a strong union environment. The pressure of trying to remain alive after an illegal traffic stop. The pressure of continuing to push for a COB when so many were telling us that it couldn't be done. The board will also need to be forward-thinking. The COB is not a new subject to me. Back in August of 2016, I planned an event that ultimately recommended a COB as an idea for Nashville. Long before the killing of Jacquees Clemens or Daniel Hambrick, recommendations from this event, again, was for oversight. My determination, knowledge, experience, research, and lessons learned will allow me to bring a unique and much-needed perspective to the board. So that's the first question. Any questions from you on the first question?
Did you have a question?
No, just let him roll.
Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
go ahead and do the whole thing.
Next question. As a child, I attended mass meetings during the 1960s civil rights movement. I witnessed people putting their lives on the line just to run for office. That definitely had an effect on me as far as social justice. I'm a core member of Community Oversight now, and I asked the group, where would the possibility of oversight be in Nashville without this coalition? I'm active in the Tennessee NAACP. I'm on the executive committee, and I'm also actively involved in the Nashville branch, including serving on the Criminal Justice Committee. I'm a former subcommittee chair of Noah. I'm a church leader for over 30 years, where I've mostly focused on service and outreach and justice issues. I've had 80 hours of anti-racism training. My experience in civil rights and equity will again allow me to bring a unique and much-needed perspective to the board. Third question. I have had mostly neutral to positive experiences with the police. Again, I was a survivor about 40 years ago of a perceived police misconduct out of state. I have respect and empathy for the challenging job of law enforcement. I have served as a juror, visited inmates in local and state prisons, quite a bit familiarity with the criminal justice system in Nashville. Being a survivor of police misconduct and concerning individuals, and my concern for individuals that are affected by it, but still having respect and empathy for the job of law enforcement. In addition to my long-standing church leadership, that will allow me to be fair if I am chosen to be on the board. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Are there questions?
Yes, I do. I've got a couple. Can you explain the police misconduct to which you're referring?
I was an engineering intern, and it was in the state of Missouri. I was working during the summer. My roommate that I was living with when I was in St. Louis, he was also an engineering intern. He was driving a South Carolina car with a South Carolina plate on it. We were stopped, and my roommate should not have moved, but he went to the glove compartment to get the registration out. And when that happened, I remember the gun being pulled. It was either pulled or he was ready to pull it. And I remember that. And so we were still. And then later on, when things calmed down, the officer said that actually they were looking for a plate from North Carolina. But it was two black men that were in a car, and we were stopped on the interstate, and I could have lost my life. But I'm here to talk about it. I'm still here. I've had a good life.
So to sum this up, the police misconduct to which you're referring is you were stopped and you or the passenger reached in the glove box and the officer drew a gun on you.
Yes, but I was saying he should not have moved, but we should not have been stopped.
Why do you think you were stopped?
Because we were two black men in a car that had North Carolina, even though his plate was South Carolina. But it was North Carolina they were looking for, but we were stopped.
Were they looking for two black men in a car with a North Carolina plate?
I'm not completely sure of that. I have to admit that.
You think it was racial why they stopped you?
Pardon?
You think it was racial why they stopped you?
I think we were profiled. I can't say whether it was race. You got to realize this was years ago.
Okay.
But when this happens to you, you don't forget.
I understand and I respect the fact that you have had an issue to deal with. I do want to refer to a couple of things on your Twitter feed. I've looked at your social media and it's quite clear that you, and good to see you again, Mr. Hayes. We've seen each other before.
We have.
But it's quite clear you're active in the movement for the COP, and what I want to do is respond to some of your Twitter statements, like I'm sick of those unaffected by officer misconduct saying there's no problem, and I'm sick of people either saying or thinking that all officers are good and all people of color are bad. Do you believe that there's racism in the criminal justice system?
I believe there's racism in America.
Do you believe there's specifically racism in our criminal justice system?
If there's racism in America, there's racism in the criminal justice system.
Do you believe that you can be non-biased when if there was a black victim and a white police officer with an incident that comes before you?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
All right.
And I'm going to be rude 1 second because we have about 2 more minutes. So
Go ahead.
I'm going to
You
see if
stop me.
somebody else
That's fine.
has a question or wants to say something.
That's not rude.
And I will, if I can at least say though,
Yes.
concerning that incident, I was out of state. I think in my application I said it was perceived, that I perceived it was misconduct. It wasn't necessarily misconduct because I wasn't sure. So I wanted to set that record straight.
Anyone who wants, there is 1 minute left if anyone else has a question. Yes, sir.
Real quickly, how old were you at that time?
I was 22, I believe.
And you said you'd received about 80 hours of anti-racism training. What was that about?
That was through my church. That was back in 2000, and yeah, we actually decided we were going to be an anti-racist denomination, and so I was one of the earlier ones that went through that training, and yeah, that's been something that's had a very good effect on my life.
Madam Chair, if I may.
You got less than a minute.
I would just like to confirm your statement that I do see that you do include the word perceived. Just want to validate your statement.
Yes.
On question 29.
Thank you. Thank you.
30 seconds or less, anything that you'd like to leave with us before you exit?
I know you can find a lot of people in Nashville that are qualified for this board, but I don't think you could find many that have the qualifications, the education, the experience.
And we want to thank you
that
so
I have.
much. I'm sorry for being rude. You
Thank
hear
you.
the angels saying it's time to go. So thank you. Have
Thank
a
you for your time.
wonderful evening. Thank you so very much for coming in.
Appreciate it, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
I'm going to remember this. I'm going to turn to you and say something, but I... Hi there, how are you, sir?
Hey, good evening.
Okay, so you have the 3 questions?
Yes, ma'am, right here.
Okay, so it is going to be your show. We're going to let you talk about those 3 questions. Anything you want, you'll have 10 minutes, and then at the end, if you finish before the 10 minutes is up, then we will have some questions for you.
All right.
Thank you. It's your show.
Well, the first question is briefly explain why you're interested in serving the Community Oversight Board and the reasons you wish to serve. One of the most unique aspects of wanting to serve is that I actually live in the community where Daniel Hamburg was shot and killed. He was shot and killed a block away from where I live. I live in Henry Hill. And so at that moment when I heard the sirens, I made the comment to my wife, I said, somebody's just been shot. And then about an hour after that, Freddie O'Connell, city councilman, had contacted me because he and I had already been in contact about the violence and things that were going on in our community. We were already corresponding with each other and getting together with meetings in our community over those issues. And then he asked me to come out and speak with some of the witnesses there because of my perspective of being a former police officer. So I was able to give him an understanding about the use of force continuum, questions that he had on police policies and procedures and standard operating procedures on when it's right for a police officer to use force, and deadly force especially. We actually went through the community and actually spoke to witnesses that actually saw the officer chasing Daniel Harbrook from the moment from the parking lot to the street and around the corner when the shooting happened. So I was there, I lived there in that community. I have a bird's eye view of what goes on there every day. And so I think that unique perspective is what gives me a great insight to be on that board, along with having to be a former New Orleans police officer that served for 5 years in my own community in New Orleans. So I guess that'll answer part of that question. And then the second one is please describe your background, which I have a little bit, in the familiarity of civil rights and equity issues. I'm very aware of one of the most important cornerstone of our laws of the Fourth Amendment, which is the bread and butter and how officers are supposed to serve both the state and federal Constitution of the United States. And one of the biggest reasons why I became a police officer in New Orleans is because of my background in being a victim of police brutality in my community. One of the things I wanted to do was to serve my community because growing up in a high crime neighborhood that I grew up in the 9th Ward, you see the everyday tragedies that a high crime neighborhood brings to you. So I wanted to also bring law and order to that, serve our community, and to do it in a right manner, and not taking away citizens' rights and dignity in that service. And so that's what really compelled me to wanting to be a policeman in my community and to do it in service of my community and to do it the right way. So that'll answer the second question. And then it says, please describe your background and familiarity with criminal justice and police practices. Of course, I kind of answered that, but I think one of the most important aspects of having worked with the New Orleans Police Department is that when I came in 1997, we were the new generation of officers. If some of you are familiar with the New Orleans Police Department, it was a very corrupt department. We were those new officers that were coming in to clean that department up. Some of you are also familiar with Chief Surpass as well. I served under him while I was there when he was an assistant chief. Chief Pennington was our head chief at the time. But our department was about to be taken over by the Justice Department. And we had officers that were working for Colombian cartels, guarding warehouses full of cocaine, assassinating witnesses, and killing other gangs that were rivals to the cartels that they were working for. Along with all the civil rights complaints that were mounting in the city, the federal government was about to take us over. So again, I came in and I was able to help bring a new era in our department. And so that gives me another unique perspective about being on this board because of the changes that need to be made in our city. Not only have I been working and corresponding with Councilman O'Connell, but I've also been speaking about training along with Assistant Chief Drake. He and I have been corresponding with each other before this incident took place, and we've continued to talk about training officers and those things and using my experiences to help the Nashville Police Department. So that's about it. I'll be more than happy to answer some of your questions.
Got a couple.
Okay, yes, sir.
What do you do now?
I actually work for Metro Water Services, but before my wife didn't want me doing police work anymore. So when Chief Surpass and I ran into each other when he was here, he asked me why I didn't join. I said, well, my supervisor doesn't want me doing that anymore. So, but before that, I was with the community Davidson County Community Corrections Program right across the street. I was assigned to Judge Wyatt's court. I had criminal cases in all 6 divisions, but primarily his court, Judge Fishburne, and Judge Dozier's court as well before I moved over to water.
This question I've asked to every candidate, but in your situation, it seems to change the nature of it every time I ask it because of people's relationships with the police department. But as a policeman, and you had the opportunity, I'm sure, to see many officers testify in court and this kind of thing, do you believe that police officers deserve any more credibility in that truthfulness and veracity than a normal citizen, ordinary citizen?
I mean, every citizen, whether it be a policeman or a regular citizen, all deserve the same amount of credibility. I do believe that police officers should be held at a higher standard because you're a law enforcer. The community gives you the power and authority not to abuse them, but to serve them. And so when it comes to, the credibility issue, it has to also deal with the officer and their track record and how they have testified. I've seen officers lie and have been held accountable for that, and they've lost their jobs because you can't testify anymore once you've been found lying under oath. And I've seen them arrested as well for that. We have a zero tolerance in New Orleans when I was there. It's a little bit different here, but in New Orleans, it was a new day. Hopefully we can.
One other question. I don't want to take a bit.
Okay, does anybody else have one?
When you were an officer, what duty, what were you in a precinct? Were you?
We have districts there. I did my first 3 years. I was there a total of about 5, but I did my first 3 years in the French Quarter, which is the 8th district. So I started off in patrol, regular motorized patrol, foot patrol on Bourbon Street, worked Mardi Gras, then moved over into what we call the High Crimes Task Force, which is primarily a proactive unit to suppress crime. And then I also did undercover narcotics work as well, working with Air Force Intelligence, the DEA, ATF, and FBI. And my final place that I worked after I got out of that was a school resource officer over a junior high.
Did you tell me you had a quick one?
Just a comment. I just want to
Okay,
thank
2
you.
minutes.
I'm only going to take 30 seconds.
Okay.
You have a unique perspective here, having been through what you went through with the Hamburg thing and your background as a probation officer in the NAACP and New Orleans police officer. Appreciate your attitude about all that.
Thank you.
You've got about 1 minute.
Just wanted to, one of the things I'm particularly interested in is your experience as a public housing community resident. Do you believe that there are perhaps different strategies that police officers might need or benefit from utilizing to establish trust in public housing communities versus other communities?
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen that we've done successfully in New Orleans is that we had cops units. I don't know if you all have them here, but I don't see foot patrols in our community. I don't see officers getting out to get to know people like I did when I worked in those cops units. I see a very standoffish police force here in Nashville where, you know, you have officers, they're professional, but they don't know you. They don't, you know, one of the things I prided myself on in my district is I knew the people in my district.
And I'm so sorry, I'm trying to do
Thank
time,
you.
and I want to say thank you so very much, and have a good night.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Parrish?
Yes, ma'am.
You have your 3 questions with you?
I do different
Okay.
questions with me, so.
Okay,
I'm ready
so
to go
what I'm
whenever
gonna
you
say
are
is,
ready.
when we start, it will be your show. You may go over those questions, to answer those questions any way you like. You have 10 minutes. If you take the whole 10 minutes, then that will be that. But if you have some left over, then we'll have some questions for you. So it's all on you, sir.
All right. So just start with the questions, or you
Yes,
just
sir, any way you wanna start.
Okay, as far as serving on the Community Oversight Board, when this first came about, I thought this was an absolute fantastic idea, because I see the Oversight Board as a way to bridge the community between the police department, your community nonprofits, your schools, and your community resource officers all together. And I think this board would be a fantastic thing going through the nonprofits of your local communities to reach to the community resource officers, get in the schools, help educate the kids, get them out of trouble, and where we don't have to have so much on the oversight. But part of the oversight is to look at these problems that people are complaining about, but make sure they are with merit, and that we review case by case, piece by piece, and make sure that everyone is represented in a legal and fair manner. Background, civil issues. Growing up, I'm half-blood Indian. I'm also LGBTQ. So I've had it on both sides of the discrimination process. You're profiling the whole bit. So I've experienced it firsthand. Where I grew up, it was not so much that people really, in my area, they didn't care about American Indians. It wasn't a real popular thing. Also, being gay was way out of realm. So, and then as I grew up, my partner was black, so we went through a lot of issues. So I know how people can look at that, and I think I've got a good, well-rounded thing, especially in my community, of what they see as civil rights issues and equity and all that. So I think I'd be very well served with my past knowledge. Background experience in criminal justice and policing. I don't really have any civil policing. I am a veteran of the United States Navy. I had 6 tours. I got hurt in my last tour overseas, so I've been out of the military since 1994 in medical. What I had there was military police, military code of justice. So a lot of the booking practices, the way you investigate things and looking to see how things go together are very similar, but not exact. The military code of justice is a little bit more defined in what they look for and how you go about doing it, other than what I do know of civil police practice. I have 2 uncles that was chiefs of police, detectives. I've got cousins that serves on the sheriff's department back in Cumberland County in Tennessee. I had an uncle that was a lawyer, and I worked with them, growing up in their law practices, filing, doing stuff like that. So I think I've got a pretty good overview of
the justice system, and I could be very fair and impartial and looking at all cases, evidence, tapes, and just kind of with my military background, knowing exactly kind of what one person is thinking as to what another person is thinking from a videotape. That was part of the military training that we had, was to look at that and break it down and really go through it and be objective to it.
I'm opening it up for any questions. Councilman Kendall, do you want to go first since we kind
Since I have
of went over you last
standard
time?
question. This is kind of a standard question I ask. Everything being equal, otherwise facts, et cetera, that you may not be aware of. If a police officer testifies and just a regular citizen testifies and there's conflict in the testimony, do you believe that the police officer's testimony deserved more credibility or equal or what?
I believe you need to look at it equally, but I think as far as overall, the policing effort, they're supposed to be trained, and as long as there are any discrepancies from what you realize what the training is as to what procedures they used, that will hold just a tad more as long as it's not any inconsistencies within it.
Other questions?
Just want to clarify one thing you said. You when you were describing your background, you said you experienced profiling firsthand. Is that what you were saying? Could you explain that a little bit more?
Profiling, well, with part of that because my partner was African American, and he is African American. Their family lived literally here in the Edge Hill area back in the while back days. Part of that was if you've seen a black male and a white male, they were automatic. A lot of the officers in that day assumed you were there to buy drugs, have some type of criminal activity, something like that. So I think that's part of what you got to understand how it looks, but also know what people's reactions are to it. As long as they don't overreact, the officer's not going to overreact. So that's part of bridging the community and actually educating the community how to communicate with the officers.
Any other questions?
I was curious, not curious, but your opening statement about the purpose that you saw in this committee of making a difference in the community. And I'm going to assume that this board is not just for looking at individual cases, but to make recommendations to how that would happen. What specific, do you have any specific ideas at this point?
Specifically, I really think once this board gets put together, that we need to talk to not only the community resource officers in the area, but the school resource officers. Kind of meet with them and see what their problems, what their main issues are that they have in the distressed areas, kind of like out in the Madison community where I live, because I know we have a lot of what some people think are more distressed than what they really are. The community works out there really close, and we're really trying to get it put together, but the nonprofits out there are really reaching out. We have a lot of great nonprofits that I have the privilege of working with to reach out to the people in the community to try to bring that together with the resource officers. I've got a great relationship with Officer Ware and Officer Parnelli out there, working with the community, working with the youth, working with the homeless, trying to maintain that. And just, I know there's more that we can do. I just know that. And I see the Oversight Board as a bridge to the mistrust that some of the people have to the police department, because it's all about communication. And I think that's where part of the biggest issue is the communication factor, because a lot of the community people feel that they can't talk to an officer, and a lot of officers feel that they can't really talk to the community. So I think this board, it would be one of the things to get into the communities, have small meetings and grow those meetings and really get to the core of the problem and solve it. And I think we can actually do that through the Oversight Board.
Well, sir, you have a little less than a minute. Is there anything dying that you want to share with us before your exit?
Nothing more, but I would just love to serve, and I thank you all for listening to me, and I hope you take very seriously how passionate I am about this.
Thank you for your time, sir, and you have a great night.
Thank you.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Good, how are y'all?
Fine. You have the 3 questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when we start, and we will start at 7 o'clock, it will be your show. You can go through the questions any way you want, talk any way you want, and then at the end, if you have time, you have 10 minutes. If you have time left over, then we will ask some questions of you.
Okay.
And guess what? It's 7 o'clock.
All right, well, y'all are a well-oiled machine. Well, I am Anne Betancourt, and I'm excited to be here as a nominee by petition. And I am an almost 58-year-old single mother. I have 4 children, all adults at this point. And I've come to the point in my life where I have some available time, and I would like to start giving back to the community. And so that's one of the big reasons I'm here. I grew up watching my parents serve the community, and I knew that I always would, and the time has finally come, and I'm interested in pouring back in. I am passionate about Nashville. I think it's a great place to live. I've been here since 2008, and I'm looking for a way to give back and to make it a safe and vibrant and equitable city, a place where more people want to live and work and have their families and grow. In my professional life, before I was blessed to quit and raise my children, I was a supervisor and then a manager in a customer service department. So I have a broad range of experience dealing with all different kinds of people. During the course of raising my children, I was a member of 2 different boards, one a homeowners association and one a tutorial where my children attended. And so I have some experience in leadership and experience dealing with all different kinds of people. That was mainly in my professional life before I had kids. And I was raised in Texas. It's very multi-ethnic there, but I feel like that I did not realize the extent to which sometimes racial issues and ethnic issues are still a part of our society. And I moved to Memphis in 2002, before we moved to Nashville in 2008, and it was there that my eyes got opened, and I was like, oh, I guess Texas, I just didn't have a clue. Well, I discovered in Memphis that sadly, racism is alive and well with some people. Not a huge cross-section, and I believe progress has been made, but it was evident, and I was shocked. So I guess since then, I have made a bigger effort to be aware of my surroundings, to be aware of things going on in the community, to educate myself, and to be informed, and as much as I could be involved. I do not have any specific background or experience with civil rights, but as I've just mentioned, I was raised not to see color, not to see religion. You know, my parents never differentiated, and I feel like I'm a very fair-minded person. I feel like I'm a person who can take a set of circumstances and look at the circumstances as they are and make a good judgment call. I think I'm a quick learner, and I'm willing to put in the time to be educated, to take any courses or read any materials so that I would be an effective and qualified board member. The same goes for I don't have any direct experience or background in criminal justice or policing policies. Again, I think I'm a quick study, and if I was privileged to be put on the board, I would make it a priority to become informed and educated to whatever extent is necessary that I would be effective on the board. So I appreciate the opportunity. I couldn't believe when there were so many people involved and interested, willing to put forth time and effort. And so thank y'all for your time and for your service. I think y'all are all on the council, right? Yes. So you put in,
yes.
I know from being on boards, you put in a lot of time, and it's not just in meetings. So, thank you very much, and that's all.
Thank you. We'd like to open the floor for questions.
Ms. Betancourt. They keep looking at me because I asked the same question of a candidate.
Okay.
One particular question. Being a member of this board, you will run into situations where maybe the facts are something that are not clear, and it comes down to the testimony of an officer versus citizens, normal citizens. Do you feel that the officer's testimony in cases like that deserve more credibility than the ordinary citizen? How do you feel about that?
Well, I would like, in a perfect world, you would assume that the officer, would have been trained and that would be, but that's a perfect world. I think personally, I would look at the testimony of all parties involved, and I would try to rely on not on just the facts, but on my sense of that person and how credible that they were.
Okay.
I would like for you to explain or elaborate on the statement you made. You said you were taught not to see color.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was just never an issue. I mean, it was never brought up. And I think, I went to school with all different kinds of people, race, religion, ethnicity. And like I said, it wasn't until I was in my 40s and I moved to Memphis that I began to realize some people saw people, by color.
Did you want to explain that a little bit, that situation?
Well,
you don't have to if it's uncomfortable.
No, I don't mind at all because it was striking. I had on several different occasions people tell me not to go to particular parts of town, not to go to a particular Walmart because the individuals there might not be safe. And they were specifically talking about African Americans. And this is Memphis. And so my eyes got opened wide real quickly because I was horrified by that. I mean, I would just sit there, what do I say to this? How in the world? Because those were in fact the very places I'd been going. And of course not experiencing anything that it, to my view, caused me to feel.
Did you ever have any experiences where you saw discrimination in action in terms of police versus citizenry?
No, I sure haven't seen it in action. I have not.
I think you had a question.
I was appreciate you asking that question. Sometimes those of us who are Caucasian do not perceive that we see color because we don't experience the things that people who are a different color that we are experience. And so I wanted to maybe see if you had any interactions with folks in your life experience either in Texas or in Memphis who are not Caucasian like we are and had maybe learned from them how their being a person of color shaped their life opportunities or the way that they were treated by others, and just didn't know if you had any experience from folks who are of a different color than you and I.
Yes, I did. When I was a supervisor in the customer service department, there were, of course, all different kinds of people, and I had occasion to have to constructively, give a review or something, and I actually had a couple of different people say, well, sometimes I just feel like it's because of the color of my skin, that people make these kinds of judgments, and I would say, well, I don't know what to say to that, but I believe you know me well enough and my supervisor well enough that would not be an issue. But, that's about it. It was pretty mild, and I had a great working relationship, with her and the other people that brought that up to me, but pretty mild. And I agree with you. I think it's very hard for a Caucasian, to put themselves in that situation and to understand it. Another book, I read a book when my daughter started at UT Chattanooga that was by a man named I knew I should have looked it up before I came, so I apologize. But it really opened my eyes. It was written by a black man, and he chronicled some of his experiences, and it was an eye-opener. So I do feel like that this issue is still in our society, and that it needs to be addressed, and people need to learn more about one another.
Do you realize the Oversight Board is not a racial board? That
Yes, sir.
It's a board that hopefully, if there are any police brutality, no matter whether,
Who it is.
you know, if it's his
Right.
brother, his mama, it's not all based on racism, you understand?
I do, yes, sir, absolutely I do.
Okay, you have a little less than a minute before you leave, so is there anything that you would like to leave with us upon your exit?
I think I've said it all. I'd be honored to serve, and I know that whoever is appointed to serve is going to be somebody that y'all have judged to be the right people in the job, and I have great hopes for it being a positive impact on our city. So,
Thank you so very much for coming to share with us, and you have a great night.
all right, thank you. Y'all too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Good night.
You can, just for there, and just this one.
Mr. Dozier, do you have the 3 questions that were sent to you?
I do.
Okay, so it's gonna be your show. We're gonna let you go on that, answer them. You have 10 minutes to do it any way you want to.
Okay.
If you finish before the 10 minutes, then we will have some questions for you.
Okay.
And it's your show now.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Eric Dozier. I'm currently, I was actually having a discussion with someone out in the hallway and asked me to kind of explain my interest in the Community Oversight Board and the reason I wish to serve. And I have to say that I hadn't considered it until a dear friend of mine that had been involved in that process for since the beginning saw to it that I was nominated by my religious community to serve, and so when I asked her why, she actually mentioned that I had, she knows my work, and I've been involved in a lot of justice and equity work as far back as my middle school and high school years growing up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I've always been involved in using collaborative and consultative processes to seek justice. My background is I have an educational background in public policy with a focus on youth, race, and education. And that has always driven me to be very attentive to how the systems that we grow up in impact youth, and particularly youth of color, a lot of times in very negative ways. And so I've spent most of my career as my adult career as a cultural activist that has always had a focus on how we can begin to transform a culture of inequity through the arts and education. So I do a lot of my work in the city using music, using my background as my background in public policy and also theology to raise awareness around issues of inequity and racism and division. And so the opportunity to serve on a committee that is looking at addressing that as it relates to one particular sector of society. Like I said, this is one particular area. My area is primarily education, but as we know, even in the city of Nashville, you have African American youth are suspended at 5 times the rate of their counterparts for the same infraction in school. So it's not just something that starts the interaction between the community and the police department doesn't start when these young people become adults. It starts earlier than that. I am currently serving as a Director of Equity and Campus Culture for the Episcopal School of Nashville, which is located on 5th and Woodland. We work heavily in the community in partnership with East Park Community Center. I've run education courses there for young people as well as adults about racial justice and racial unity. I've participated in the Racial Equity and Arts Leadership Program in the city that has put me in a conversation, citywide conversation about the role that artists and educators play in reforming and participating in the conversation. Participating in the conversation around reforming policy as it relates to racial equity, I've traveled quite a bit across the country and worked with diverse groups, which I think is another thing that I would bring to the table, particularly seeing that even now. There are 140 languages spoken in our public school system right now, and 30% of the kids that are speaking other languages speak that language when they go home and speak to their parents. So Nashville's landscape is changing quite rapidly, and to be able to communicate about issues that affect a broader subset of our humanity, I think is essential when you talk about coming together and discussing these issues with a diverse group of people that are concerned, but also about a more diverse group of people that are emerging in the city. As far as my direct experience as it relates to criminal justice and policing, as I said, my primary focus throughout my adult career has been youth, race, and education. But as we know, we're not just talking about a problem that impacts one sector of our society. It is something that I believe is something that can be looked at from the perspective of culture. And one of the issues I think that really impacts the way policing is done is perception of criminality in other people that is not necessarily there. And it also doesn't bear out statistically when you talk about crime statistics in the United States and specifically in our urban centers in this country. So my direct experience in policing and criminal justice, well, I don't have as far as career-wise, but there has been a lot of overlap in the work that I've done in the education sector. Am I running out of time? I know I keep.
No, not yet. It's up to you. I'm sorry I was rude and interrupted you.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm a performer as well. So when I see the finger go up, I know that it's time to kind of.
So somebody hit me over here. Want to make sure to get his question in.
Yes.
So I'm going to go over here first.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, very briefly, I see you're very active, and you got some strong views on the government, racial equality, racial profiling, police shootings. So very quickly, do you see yourself in this role as an advocate for a particular disenfranchised population, or do you see yourself as an objective fact finder?
Well, I've always really worked in. I would describe myself as a seeker of truth. And the thing is that when you come around the table, you're sitting around the table with people with diverse perspectives. No one person around that table has a complete has cornered the market on the truth of a situation. And so, ergo, the reason why we've established the Community Oversight Board in the city is so that we can bring more people to the table, so that we can seek truth together and get a broader perspective on what is going on. And I'm a fan of data. So I think that those consultations should be data driven. But I also think that individuals that do come to the table should be able to bring their whole selves to the table, because I feel like people need to be able to express, what they're feeling, and then we come together around that, and then we take that as well. Because I know that, a lot of times when people come to gatherings, they're expected to be a particular way sometimes, or there are certain things that are expected, but I think that we're all better together, and that if people are allowed to be...
Please forgive me for being
rude,
go
ahead.
But your time is that, and
Okay.
we want to thank you all so very much for coming in, and you have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
A little flustered. Mrs. Sweatt, how are you?
How you doing?
I am fine. You have the 3 questions that we wanted to hear from you?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up, and it's gonna be your show. You talk about those 3 questions any way you want to. If you finish, you have 10 minutes. If you finish before the 10 minutes, we will ask you some questions. And it is your time now, sir.
So you just want me to explain?
Yes, sir, kind of any way that you want to talk about those. Those kind of gave you an overview of what we're looking for. So any way you want to talk to them, one at a time, put them together. It's up to you, sir.
Yeah, my interest is that in getting on the committee to have both sides understand the complexity of both sides. Those who are wounded or those who caused the wound. That either both of them have their own their own physical things and psychological things that they have to go through before and after. And you don't want to be already prejudiced on one side that they automatically did the right thing or they automatically did the wrong thing. So since I've been in this field before, I have an understanding of both of it. My background in this, the civil rights thing, is that I graduated from North High School, and during that period of time was during the time of integration, and then I was able to be both a part of it and then also be able to work through it and not have any hard feelings on any time inside. Originally, I'm from Dixon County, and down now we didn't have any problem with it at all, but we moved up here when I was about 7 years of age, and back there was in a one-room schoolhouse. Everybody was in the one room, and everybody got along together. Here I lived probably about a rock throw from Norfolk, but I had to go to Pearl. A lot of times I would walk because I would beat the bus, because the time you go on waiting on the bus, I could walk there, take everybody else home first, and then come back and get us. And I walk. My background in this criminal justice, I worked at Tennessee State University in security. I went around and locked doors, unlocked doors. Also, I was able to work also in the surveillance room. In the surveillance room, I was able to see what was going on and tell the other officers of what was going on, where it was going on, whatever. And my wife also worked in this field in Tennessee State, and what we had learned in our training was that anytime a situation come up and you was by yourself, no matter what, you'd always ask for help. You wouldn't go out there and try to do it on your own, because there's always something that could happen. but we would always ask for backup. We wouldn't go out there and try to do it on our own, no matter if we thought that we could handle it or not. And also, this is my opinion, but a lot of times that gave us the same idea. If you are following somebody in a car, have a car, and they running running through a residential area, you will stop and call for backup instead of going on pursuing. Like you could do the same thing as an officer. It'd be better. And that way you're not putting your life in danger, life of other people in danger, and shots fired, and you don't know. There's been a lot of officers been shot by officers because they get in there and they get all hyped up and it kind of throws them off. And then I was listening to one report about some of the officers, I think it's in Maryland. My brother lived in Maryland. He was saying that officer was saying a lot of times they would sing a song, drink a beer before they get out because there's so much stress on them. And so I would like to see that policy change where they would, stop and call for backup instead of trying to do it on their own. Like I said, my wife was also in this field, and as out there at TSU during that time until they went to a private office. And then once in the surveillance room, once they started requiring me to tow the gun, I said it was time for me to go on. I've been self-employed since '81, but I still work another area. And then I'm going to pass this around, but y'all don't have to look at it. I should have passed it around when I first said thing now, but y'all can see some of the things y'all can pass around. But I think that that's a person answer, but then the ministry that also makes me have compassion on the officers and those criminals. And at the same time, with so much things going on, I still have to have an open mind. Because I think last week we got a problem on our street, and I think there was a wreck on Colashua Highway, and the police came and the dogs led them to the house next door, across the street from me. And the dogs, the lady was in there sleeping. One officer wanted to knock on the window, but the main officer there, he told them, no, we'll wait on that. And so they called the SWAT team later on, and they did get the lady out, and they shot the bugs and everything, but the people weren't there, so evidently, before the police got there, they was already gone. But one officer having the mindset to wait instead of just rushing on in. And so they gave me a personal experience. I think it was Thursday of last week. I don't know how much more y'all want me to say or not. I'm a Baptist preacher. I can talk forever.
And it's up to you. You might want to have some questions now but it's up to you.
Oh, yeah, y'all have any questions? Oh, you want me to ask the question?
No. If you want to stop now, feel free. You've got 3 more minutes that you can talk, or you can stop now and let us ask you some questions.
That's fine. Y'all can ask questions.
Okay. Questions, anyone?
I just, Councilman Pardue asked, at least mentioned to one of the other candidates that you realize this is not a committee that's just dealing with race, that it's police, equity of police to all citizens. Do you understand that?
Right.
Any other questions?
Just one quick one. You noted that your spouse has some law enforcement agency relationship, and can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, she also worked at Tennessee State as security, and then she was in the. I would say so. She was such a good officer. She worked the main booth and had to phone to the president's office because she knew the people who was coming in and leaving out, and so she was able to monitor that. But like I say, once they went to the, they was trying to make a job for once they went to the private service, she decided to move on. She even tried out there on Brick Church right Pike at the school with problem kids that they never put them out no matter what was going on. And she kept there for a while, but, you know, being a mother of 6 daughters and 6 granddaughters, 7 granddaughters and a great-granddaughter, and 1 son, 1 grandson and a great-grandson. That was enough having disciplined children.
I also want to commend you on, it's the first time I believe I've ever heard a preacher give opening remarks in 7 minutes or less.
Especially Baptists.
I want to commend you on your recognition there, and hope you keep up the good work in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so very much, sir. You have under a minute. Is there anything you want to leave with us?
Well, I also, actually, I'm President Hayes Park Neighborhood Association, I'm sure y'all read that. And I was able to work with the Hayes Park group, Triple A group, and get them to work together to come to one decision to go on and get the contextual overlay, which preserves our neighborhood. We still have the rivers running through the yards and deers and kids without having them come in with a big and tall. And so I was able to get that before the council.
Yes, sir.
And
so thank you so, I'm so sorry. They got me as the bad guy when the time runs. So please forgive me, sir, but thank you so very much for coming in here and sharing with us.
I'm just gonna say, anybody work with Melvin Black out there?
You have a nice, I'm sorry, have a wonderful night, sir.
Thank you, God. This is all.
Commend you, you play that role so well.
She put my head on. That's a. Come on.
Thank you so much.
God bless y'all.
My friend was gonna get his 2 cents in anyway, right? Hello, sir, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I am fine. You have the 3 questions we sent you?
I did.
Okay, so this is how this goes. You've got 10 minutes, and we want to hear your the answer to the questions. You can do it any way you want, just talk or whatever. If you finish before your 10 minutes is up, then we will have some questions for you. So It's up to you, sir, and now it's your show.
Oh, so this is not me. There you go. Thank you. And why am I interested in serving on the board? Well, I'm one of the people of this county, just like everyone else. I saw that the amendment was written so as not to exclude some of the people, so I thought, well, I'm one of the people. I wouldn't mind seeing how this goes and seeing how the Oversight Board functions and what its objectives are. With regards to my background in civil rights or equity issues, I haven't been involved in any criminal cases of sort to, say I have this experience with the police or this experience in court or the law. I said in my application that I'm a self-taught student of Black's Law Dictionary. I read if you're not familiar with Black's Law Dictionary, that's the second leading source of authority for definitions used in law and legal briefs.
We're familiar with it.
Pardon me?
We're familiar with it.
I'm sure people are. I feel as if my background in understanding what those terms are and also in reading them with the Tennessee Code annotated, which I study as well. I have an understanding of what legal and lawful is and what man's rights are and how they're protected and how everyone here has sworn an oath to uphold those rights. And my background, probably what I probably have best to offer is just areas of conflict resolution. I think that I've been in scenarios in what people in public relations circles might call damage control with very large corporations who are under intense scrutiny from whether they be people protesting against their product or what have you. And in one particular case, I worked closely with the CEO of Mount Olive Pickle Company, which is the largest pickle company in this country. And they were undergoing some severe problems with the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, which was trying to mandate policies for purchasers of cucumbers. And they didn't know how to really approach this issue and how to really come up with something that would be a usable response. And actually traveled to North Carolina, met with migrant workers, met with the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, which was named FLOC, met with the Public Relations Director, met with the CEO, met with met with some of the farmers, went to migrant housing, saw how people were housed, and listened to the concerns of the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, and also the concerns that the cucumber purchasers had, which were, we can't tell farmers what to do. We can't mandate how they run their operations. And after about 1.5 years with them and studying the agribusiness model, which is a $6 billion industry, it's very lucrative. I said, well, hey, I think I have your solution. And that is that you don't need to do anything different. You reward all the farmers who want to comply with the Farm Labor Organizing Committee's demands, and you pay more for the pickles that come, or the cucumbers that come from that farm. And they considered it, in their words, the silver bullet, for the issue they were facing. And FLOC, also welcomed it because it didn't tell anybody what to do with their private business or enterprise, but it did allow them to convince farmers why there was a need, or why they should better their housing facilities, and it ended up working out fairly well for them. And I'm not really a pitch guy or a sell guy, so I'm not going to try to close you with anything hard. If you have questions for me about what I'm doing or what I might bring, go ahead.
Okay, questions?
Two questions. First one is one I ask everybody. You'll be serving on a board if you are selected that will be making a determination probably at some point as to what to recommend as relates to an incident. For example, some of those that have occurred. If it comes down to the officer versus a citizen, do you feel that the officer's credibility for the truth and veracity is greater than the citizen, or equal, or how do you look at that?
Well, I'm not really looking at either individual as having more truthfulness or not. I think, looking at the facts surrounding the case and, the incident, not necessarily whether it's one man's testimony against another man's testimony. And I'm not seeing myself as siding with any particular side as far as having a bias, if that's what you're trying to infer.
My other question is, you'll be working on a board and not as an individual.
Right.
And one of the problems sometimes with boards is if people disagree and come to different conclusions.
Right.
If that board makes a recommendation, are you willing to go along with that without dissenting? I mean, it's not the Supreme Court where you have dissents and that kind of thing. How would you look at that?
Well,
even though you might not agree with that recommendation.
I work primarily these days outside of marketing and advertising and public relations. I do something I've done for a long time, which is a producer of music. And if you've ever worked with a bunch of creative people in a room trying to get their ideas across, you know exactly what it's like to try to deal with conflict resolution or creative differences. And I can tell you there's a lot of arguments that might get started over something, that you think feels pretty trite, really. I'm not, I don't feel like it's my place to push an agenda or my position. And if the group as a whole feels that, this is where they're going, I don't see me as being somebody trying to be a thorn in the group.
Okay, that's good. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I have another question over here, and we have 2 more minutes, a little under 2 minutes.
All right. You seem to indicate that the questions that we asked you on the form were biased in some way, even stating that should any of the following answers be used against me, then we would be demonstrating prejudice or bias against you.
Correct.
Would you like to expand on that?
Well, as I understood it, as I read the amendment, and as I read the qualifications for the people, there wasn't any need for any qualification. One did not need to know civil practices or policies. One not need to know criminal law or understanding. One did not need to know all these things. All that was required was one needed to be one of the people here. So I thought that in some essence, some of these questions could be used, to create or form a bias against somebody if they didn't have that particular background. And I thought that I just wanted to state that on the record, that this was my feeling about some of the questions. But I didn't feel like, I'm not going to answer these questions, because in a spirit of full disclosure, I wanted to answer everything to the best of my abilities.
You have less than a minute left. Is there anything particular that you want us to hear upon your exit?
Well, not really. I don't feel like I'm a closer or a hard sell. I feel like I wouldn't be here if I didn't feel like I could offer something to this board.
Right.
You know what I mean? From my standpoint, it's like I've demonstrated in my past the ability to work with other organizations of diverse people to try to come to a consensus about where to go forward. And that's probably my biggest asset.
Well, we want to thank you so very much for coming in here and sharing this with us, and hope that you have a wonderful night. And that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Can we leave our stuff, we're gonna be back here tomorrow?
So we can leave everything here, except
leave
the
all-
names. We won't